the strategies as they see them, there's really 4 things you can do. If you're a service provider looking at this, thinking about it, beginning to, get the, kind of the view that there's something happening here, you can either do nothing, don't adopt it. It's either not for us, it's not in a market that we play in anyway, so therefore, nice, very nice Gainham, quick get me to beer, but it's not really a place for us to play in. You could resell if an Ariaka become very big, or Amazon start to want to, kind of wholesale some of their access services. You may look at it and say, we're not going to build it ourselves. We'll just resell, almost from a wholesaler, services that are already in the market. More likely, I think, for most, will probably be the 2 at the bottom, in that you either integrate it with what's there, to my comment of earlier, it sits within the portfolio that exists and it's incremental, or it's a service to grow in enterprise, to those that maybe haven't got a big deployment but see this as their kind of their gold mine entry into a a very big market, but they couldn't get in because the VPN market was saturated. This may be the disruption that they've been looking for. So again, depends on where you are, but I would say certainly for those that have got a major kind of IP VPN deployment, the one on the top left to me has got caution written all over it. I don't think it's one of those things you can't avoid. The question is, what do you do about it? How do you do it? And when do you do it? Because I think this is kind of, will gather some momentum, will start to kind of kick in. And therefore it's more kind of a question of when to act. This is one of those wonderful slides that I'll just tell you is wonderful, because there's lots of good stuff in there. You probably can't even see most of this stuff. But it kind of positions what some of those new incremental services may be. Alongside, if you watch that kind of the decline in the overall, kind of MPLS revenue stream, then how do I get those incremental steps? And that's a combination of introducing hybrid WAN, maybe out of area coverage, kind of cloud-based NFV type services. There's a whole raft of things there. There's a ton of detail behind each of them, but it just kind of positions some of those incremental thoughts as to how you kind of bridge the gap, so that it's, again, the perception is this is not for those that are progressive and see this as an opportunity, then there is money to be made here. It's not a give up and kind of let's all go home and pack in. There's incremental opportunity to be had and to be gleaned or gained here. I'm going to skip over that. Let me just, in the interest of time, go to here. So in terms of our position, guys, I'm just conscious of time, so I'll speed up. In terms of our position, our view is that, for us, I think I made the point earlier, it's crucial for us as a vendor, I think crucial for the Xantaro team as well, because we've got a ton of commercial and intellectual property in that whole MPLS VPN market. So, when we see the potential, let's say the challenge and the opportunity presented by us, then it's, of course, it's incumbent on us to make sure that we work with you. If you see this as an opportunity to develop, that we're there with you to help you develop. If you see opportunity to kind of enhance or increment the service you have, that you can put your trust in us and the Xantaro team to work with you on how you would architect this, how you would build it, how the services would look that you would ultimately offer to the end customer. So we're absolutely putting a ton of effort and resource into this, because clearly it's important for us that we help most of our service providers' customers in terms of new revenue streams, and ultimately then increase or hold customer retention to where it is. So you're not losing customers, you're not seeing churn from your service out to, let's say, a pure SD-WAN offer or similar like that. So in terms of our, if I just go back here, guys, in terms of the things that we'll bring to the table, and this is certainly just food for thought for maybe a follow-up discussion with the Xantaro team and the Juniper team as appropriate, is the places that we will play here, the things that we will bring to you in terms of the overall architecture. Start at the CPE. If you look at the kind of the current position, slightly overstated, of course, but there's a bunch of boxes here kind of fulfilling individual purposes, whether it's WAN acceleration, network address translation, firewall, SD-WAN router, et al., to make the point that often these things are separately, they're from separate vendors, often separate products, separately managed. One of the things that we're positioning pretty heavily here is the cloud CPE in Juniper, the NFX 250, for those of you who maybe have seen or heard of or touched. Effectively, it's an open CPE, so it has the ability to support up to 8 virtual network functions. Provides an x86 interface upbound or northbound, and you can deploy kind of whatever you like on there. It has virtual SRX on it, so it has out-of-the-box security. But if you wanted to put a Palo Alto firewall on there, I don't know why you'd do that, but anyway, put a Palo Alto firewall, a Riverbed WAN acceleration piece of software, whatever, then this is a product that can house or host multiple virtual functions. It's effectively, it looks like a Blade server, x86-based server. So that's one of the crucial elements of the CPE space. In the middle there, you see the SD-WAN controller. That's where we position what we call contrail service orchestration, and that's where the kind of our entry into the, let's say, the lower tier of orchestration. We're not there to compete with the larger, the HPs, the Amdocs of this world or anything like that. This is a lower tier kind of orchestration level to orchestrate and effectively lifecycle manage the branch network, the VNFs, the policy control, etc., that are at the heart of an SD-WAN solution. And kind of in terms of a top to bottom build, guys, it builds on the stuff that you know us for pretty well. Kind of the underlay, switching and routing, the virtual network functions like virtual SRX, virtual MX, some of the work we're doing with Contrail in terms of OpenStack integration. So we're layering into that Contrail service orchestration and cloud CP. Those are the two, like a supermarket sales guy here with a new splash on, but those are the two kind of new elements, if you wish. So to the point of earlier, SD-WAN doesn't fundamentally change the underlying infrastructure. It's still the same, ultimately IP, MPLS infrastructure, still managed in the same way, the same protocols. If you're running BGP, OSPF, whatever, that doesn't change. What you're adding to it, effectively, is that centralized policy controller and some new features or capabilities at the CPE level to react to those policy enforcement requests or instructions to move traffic by application from VPN to broadband, etc., etc. So in terms of our approach, guys, pretty much we're building a series of kind of offers there. It is still I think again an early market. I'd be interested maybe over coffee, guys. For those of you that have seen this, either you'll say, Gainham, that was dull because it's not of interest to us, and that's absolutely fair, or it's something we're beginning to think about. We're seeing this, and I'm getting pressure from, or our the kind of CTO or the higher levels are beginning to put some pressure on the teams to begin to look at this. Then I think there's an opening discussion to be had there. What we tend to find is we're having kind of dual engagements. We're having engagements with the technology teams, the network designers who look after the kind of the MPLS deployments and architectures, but also with the product teams, the product managers maybe in your organizations that are responsible for P&L on your managed VPN services. Because of course, they're looking at this thinking this is either great news because we can bolt on, or it's going to cannibalize. So we're finding we have kind of a dual engagement. In one term, we call it a service creation workshop. So that's where we're talking kind of commercial positioning and opportunity with the product management teams. And then, of course, the classic, kind of design workshops with the team at Xantaro and others to look at, how you architect this in if it's, the beginning of a journey for you. So those are both, let's say, offers on the table from both of us guys, from ourselves and Xantaro, is in terms of a kind of a next step follow-up. If it's and I guess I'll leave you on this slide. I think it's pretty much on time. Key takeaways, the IP VPN stuff is already beginning to decline, guys. The forecast is it will continue. So I think that's something that most organizations are aware of. Maybe the figures put it into stark reality, but I think most are seeing that, and it will continue. SD-WAN, I think, again, is an inclusive thing. Again, I think you'll hear so many stories from the market saying, as I mentioned, one of our dear vendor competitors saying, MPLS is dead. Nonsense, of course it isn't. But people will do that because they have no invested capital in this. So to them, they can just throw disruptive hand grenades at the market. The reality is, I think this is an incremental build on what's already there for those, again, that play in the market that this is intended to play in. The enterprises are, they're beginning their journey. So, look at some of those, the rise in interest. I suspect it's mostly enterprises. If I could dig into that Google trend line, it wouldn't surprise me if it's mostly coming from enterprise IT teams. Looking at this, thinking, what is it? When's it going to be available? How can I get to it? And then you see some of the cost savings that potentially people are sharing with them. It becomes a real interest. So I think that's the kind of what's driving ultimately. And to the point of earlier, I think this builds on a lot of the kind of the pedigree that Juniper has brought to you over many times, in terms of how we build, how we architect the kind of networks you've built with us. But that's it from me, guys. I'm done. Thank you very much for your time and attention.